Hello, my name is Synymata, and this is a breakdown of my song Forever Here with MmmCherry. Or is it MmmCherry? I'm just going to call him Cherry. So, Forever Here was the last song that I wrote for the album. This is about, I would say, August 2023. I originally started the idea against a different vocal that helped to inspire the chorus and then the idea of the drop. But ultimately, I decided that vocal wasn't quite right for the track and it didn't really give enough power for the direction I was going with the drops. So after working with Leah Culver and Cherry on the Lights cover and then also Back in Time, it was just kind of like, let's just run it back. And then Cherry, who was really good at this, he just did a bunch of passes of mumbles that I ended up Frankensteining together. And then from there, over another couple of Zoom calls, we ended up writing out all the vocals together. He recorded everything, but I asked him, because thankfully he's also in Ableton, I just told him just zip up and send me your entire session and I will just comp it on my end. And why not? Let's pull up the Frankenstein vocal that I had that Cherry wrote to. All right, so here's the render that I found after we had that initial session where Cherry just did a bunch of mumble takes over what I had so far. This is what we worked off of to write out all the vocals and then later down the line record all the finals. I'm just going to play the whole thing and let's just take a listen to it and see what this sounds like.
We'll fly away again, but I never know when I couldn't go away. Would you look so far in your old tough days? Would you look so far in your old tough days? 'Cause I know you and I will be forever here, eternity. And when we are, I know I will just find you here till the end of me. Cause down on my head, my fall. Now I know I'm taking out the door. I'm faced as you hit them fall. Now I need it an apology. 'Cause I know where we could be in a paradise. 'Cause I don't know what to. 'Cause I don't know what to. 'Cause I don't know what to.
So I'll just stop it there. So just remembering this now, that hook, I don't know what's you. Like, I remember that was one of the first things that I found that I was like, oh, this is a really cool hook melody. And then I repeated it there. And then from there, I was like, okay, we have a hook idea. That's great. And then kind of working backwards, I started kind of going through all the takes and kind of Frankensteining together a melody that I think sounded cool. You probably heard it throughout this where there's certain points where the vocal, it's like artificial as all hell.
Now I need it an apology. 'Cause I know.
So like right there, that is literally me just chopping up that he was singing apology and I just took it and just kind of dee dee dee, just kind of representing like a melody there. Hopefully Cherry doesn't hate me for showing this because it's obviously a really rough take. You can hear clipping in the vocal because we didn't care about the levels and stuff. It really did not matter. To me, I would say this is a really effective way to collaborate with people over the internet. Instead of sending someone an instrumental and saying, here, come back with the goods, sitting in on their session, feeling out like, oh, I like this, that was kind of cool, do this again. Oh, I had this idea, try this. A lot of times it's very effective in developing an entire top line that you can just write off of. So I'm going to delete this out of here and let's go through this track. And I've been looking forward to doing this breakdown because this song to me, when it was written, I felt it definitely had a different place on the album from the other tracks. The vocal, it's much more rocky. Unlike a lot of the other vocals on the album have more of like the standard EDM top line kind of vibe going on. But this one just is a completely different vibe. It just felt like a really refreshing thing to add to the album. So let's for now turn off the vocals and break down the writing first. But I know this won't take too long because the writing on this track, it's pretty simple. This song, so Forever Here, we're in G sharp minor, and it really does just revolve around the classic 6, 7, 8 progression. So this bass, yep, basic serum with an overtone on there. Yep, more basic serum. And this is just, yeah, this is just being put through diode just to give it more of like an electric guitar kind of a sound. And then also to mention too, one of Cherry's friends, which I would say is not my friend, Andrew Damien, when I was in LA and we were finishing up writing out Back in Time, he was just kind of in the room and he was like, do you want me to just track some guitar stuff on this other track you're working on? And I was like, absolutely. We went through the song and the two biggest contributions that he made was just the break guitar chords. Really clean. Yeah, I'm just running this through guitar rig. And then the other thing he did was this ARP melody. Which to me carried so much of the song during the chorus and the build. If you listen back to the original idea that I had a lot of my typical background melodies going on, but once he kind of figured out this guitar art melody, a lot of that stuff got either taken out or pushed way back. And then the intro, there's also this really bubbly sound here. Yeah, basic, yeah, just a sine wave, just kind of playing just a little ARP progression. But the biggest thing is this portal preset, and then that's just going into Valhalla. Yeah, it kind of has a chaotic kind of sound to it. Very just, it's like a texture-y kind of sound. Put that on top of the guitar. And there's a little bit of like some eerie piano stuff going on here. Noir and noir. And then getting into the build, yeah, there's just some other layers in the build section. Yeah, there's more contact. A little turn on melody here. Yeah, this is just a splice loop thing, and this is also running through Portal. And then just resampled tails from reverbs. And then looking at the percussion in the intro, so I remember this being really interesting because this loop is churned down basically just 12, but just having that clearly resampled drum loop just had a nice feel to it. To me, that's a very effective use of a sample, especially one like a drum loop that is just turned down like an octave. It just has a nice low, crumbly, crunchy kind of sound to it. And then jumping down to the build bass. Yep. Basic serum running through guitar rig. But I know what I did here was this one layer is syncopated and the other layer is just running on a straight eighth. Which is nice because it has, you can kind of feel both of those rhythms in there. Which really helped with the movement of the build. So the combination really helps that. And then we have ignition keys here, and that's layered with more ignition keys. Yeah. So something I mentioned here, this is playing just open fifths, and then there's a drone layer to that, and then you do have the guitar chords here, but there's really no other chords playing in this section, like piano chords and stuff like that. In my head, it wasn't really needed. Sometimes the absence of like a foundational like piano in the background, it's just you don't need it in certain tracks. The guitar chords are doing a lot just to kind of establish like the foundational writing. And then again, that art melody really just did a lot to make this build cool and dip into that more rocky kind of a vibe that the vocals were giving off. I'll talk about the vocals a little bit here. So there is a lot of layers going on here in the pre-chorus.
You and I will be. Just find you here, you're the rest of me. I crash down and it's all my fault. The only.
So he's singing in the same octave, but this one is he's singing it falsetto, and then in the lead he's singing it from his chest. But then also he had the range to hit the low octave as well on this.
You and I will be forever here, eternity. And from the start, no, I will just find you here, you're the rest of me.
And then when we get into the chorus, yeah, standard left right.
I crashed down and it's all my fault. I crashed down and it's all my fault. The only hours kicking down the door.
So you can hear that harmony is kind of robotic.
Frozen as we hit the floor.
This is, from what I remember, was a harmony that I made after our sessions. But again, in a lot of cases, harmonies, you can't even tell they're artificial.
I crashed down and it's all my fault. The only hours kicking down the door.
Like, you can still hear it there, but it's not obvious, and especially with the full mix of a track, it sounds totally fine. So in that case, was it worth going back to Cherry and being like, hey, let's hit this harmony that I made up later? It's like not worth it, because if it already sounds fine, then there's no reason to go crazy like that. And then that's your classic reverse reverb. So if you take a vocal, reverse it, put a reverb on it, turn it up all the way, fully wet, flatten it, and then re-reverse it. Yeah, now you have like a reverse reverb playing against your vocal.
Roll the dice. I don't know what to.
Which is a nice way to add more body to a vocal without just churning up a reverb dry wet knob. It's kind of helping you lead into what you're hearing versus it being something that keeps ringing out after that vocal plays. And then this was artificial. This was just straight up churned up with the format still left up, just to kind of give more of like a high register to this.
I don't know what to.
Yeah. Layering of vocals can help so much with just thickness, because traditionally speaking, you always want to have a lead center vocal that's just dead center, mono, and then you build off around that. So if you take like a wider plugin and you drop it onto a mono take to make it wider, it's like, yeah, you can, fuck with the dry wet, so you have still some center information, but it's not the same. Some of those imperfections from additional takes really, to me, kind of is what makes a vocal feel really organic. And then looking at all these reverb blowouts, yep, pretty standard for me. Took the hook, ran it through a reverb, flattened it out, and then just looped it. Same thing with echoes. So from there, let's look at these drops. We'll get into that, but I have note follower moving things around. But on top of that, you see that there's these LFOs running as well. And if I remember correctly, yeah. So I have an LFO running on the oscillators in Serum, and it's just kind of wavering the frequency of those. And those are definitely going to be matched on here. Yeah. But along with that bass kind of, the frequency kind of wavering, I have these LFOs here that are also doing a lot of crazy EQing. And what's nice is these LFOs are manipulating the gains of the bell notches that I have that are tied to these note follower instances. It's kind of as it's walking around the bass line, it's doing the crazy thing here. And then really quick before we look at all the effects stuff, just going through these leads. This is like a really distorted air flute thing. And so yeah, that's just kind of carrying that top lead melody to hear against the bass line. I'll stop it there for now. And then, yeah, at the end of this, I introduce this just walking ascending melody at the end, kind of playing underneath the vocal. That's the thing I will say about this drop. In terms of writing, it is pretty loose, I would say. Doing things like here, it's starting on the E, going down to the C sharp. This was not introduced in any way during the build, really, because the progression during the build is just E, F sharp, C sharp. But then here, I'm just going straight from E to C sharp. If anyone took away from other breakdowns like this idea of having progressions that make a lot of sense, here's an example where it doesn't really matter. It's really more just about the feel of that drop and kind of going to the notes that feel right for the section that they're playing in. Because then at the end of this progression, it goes up to this G, B thing, and it's not really anywhere else on the track, but it just felt right against that ascending melody that plays there. Just to kind of briefly go over it, there's a lot of effects going on in this drop. Again, these are all splice samples. And again, in a lot of cases, whenever you see or hear these weird Foley fills and stuff, again, never assume that a producer heard that in their head and immediately created it from scratch or whatever. In a lot of cases, these kinds of Foley fills can be basically anything. At one point with the song, I had probably like 30 to 40 channels of just things that I dragged in, trying to find little riffs and whatever that felt cool. And then you start to layer them and process them. Eventually you start to find things that feel good. And then when you walk away and come back, the riff still feels really strong. That's essentially how I do like fills like that, where it's really just a matter of throwing a lot of shit at the wall and just seeing what sticks. But to me, the thing that really sells this drop overall is definitely the resampling of other sounds to build up that just the crazy atmosphere that you hear, especially in the second drop. So listen to all this. Yeah. So this sound, this is resampled, but this is being shoved through Saturn, so it has that really crunchy, distorted sound to it. Yeah, a lot of this was following this melody down here, but because it's all samples, I'm able to fade it in and out of each other, which again is really nice to have that kind of control over things, just so you can get things to flow in just the right way. And then this is a pretty important sample for the drop. This is just straight up a splice sample. It's really that in conjunction with this thing. Just kind of like a nice little echoey short arp kind of a sound here that really does a lot to sell that hit of the drop. And then going on from that first drop, this is pretty much a very unique section to a song. I haven't done this before where it was just like a dead stop post drop. It's basically just like a pause on the entire song. And again, the bass line writing is just going off doing its own thing. But the thing that really sold this for me would be this chaos arc. Yeah, this is just again another sample off of Splice, and then I just turned it up, and I didn't even warp it or anything. I just left it running at whatever speed it was at that pitch. So, and that's really, it's just like a nice off the grid texture kind of thing for that kind of a section. But then the second drop, I really love how this sounds. These two samples here. This first one is this, again, just from Splice. It's just this weird ad-lib take from someone. And then there's this airy thing here. That's being excited to all hell, but before that it's running through Supermassive. But then all that together It just has this really airy, crisp high end with a lot of the same elements that are coming in during the first drop, but when you add that all together, it gets this bass. It just, I don't know, to me, like that was like the drop kind of just like expanded even further from where it was in the first drop, which to me was just kind of crazy to be able to find something like that. I would argue that is most of production, is just finding things that sound really sick and then manipulating them in ways that fit like what you're trying to achieve with your track. So just listen to this drop all together. But yeah, that is Forever Here. Again, I was really looking forward to breaking down this track. There's just a lot of stuff that I did in here for the first time that I really, really enjoyed discovering. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you all in the next breakdown.